To the stage, Dr. Edward Harcourt.
Thank you. Thanks, Joseph. Right, good evening, everybody. It's an absolute great pleasure to be here this evening and to hear some of the stories and motivations behind many of you here, not only students at John Moores. I think we heard from students at the University of Liverpool, students at Edge Hill. Are there any other universities here represented? Shout out the university name. Any other university here? Liverpool, yeah, we've got Liverpool Uni, we've got Edge Hill, we've got John Moores, we've got John Moores, we've got John Moores, I think. Northampton, Huddersfield. Wow, that's fantastic. Well, that's great. That's great, terrific. No, and it's a real privilege. I'm actually going to stand off the stage because the lights are in my eyes a little bit. So it's a real privilege for me to be here, and I'm very grateful to Joseph for inviting me along this evening. He wrote to me over the summer when I was traveling overseas and asked me if I'd come along and tell my life story at this event. And I thought, oh, I better find out a bit more about this before I agree and come along and tell you about myself. And so I met with Joseph and one of the other champions a couple of weeks ago, Sam, that's right, who studied pharmacy at John Moores University. And I was so inspired and so impressed with what they were doing and the way that they were going about it. And I think everything this evening, from the branding of the event to the quality of the engagement and to the hopefully quality of the food later on has been very, very good. So it's a pleasure for me to be here. And I said to Joseph, it's really not my story you want to be hearing about, that you want to be hearing about. It's really your story. And so I was so pleased to hear Joseph's story, and what an incredible, inspirational story to go from the point he described as being homeless and being without an opportunity to access education, to graduating with a first-class degree and working all across the EU. I mean, it's an incredible story, absolutely incredible. But before I introduce our distinguished keynote speaker, who's going to be unstoppable once he gets up, I'm sure, I thought you might like to know a little bit about my why. Because I have a couple of whys that I'll share with you. I mean, one is obviously I've been in the life of education. I was the first in my family to go to university, and it transformed the opportunities that I had in my life. I studied in America, and I didn't have that in my life plan when I grew up. I don't think my parents had that like that in my future when they raised me. And so education has been utterly transformative for me. But I think in a more general term, I like a quote from the British writer H.G. Wells, who saw education as the difference between civilization and catastrophe, on the other hand. And I think that's actually quite an important spectrum to keep in mind, because education is not only transformative for us as individuals who are caught up in education or are taking advantage of educational opportunities. It's also something that and as a couple of you said, helps ensure that we continue to improve in our life on earth here, and that we bequeath to a later generation a more secure, a more peaceful, a more tolerant, a more diverse a world for them to inherit. And we've got some troubling times ahead of us given global political developments. So education, the difference between catastrophe and civilization. But I have another why as well, and this is a little personal, if you don't mind me sharing a personal story with you. And this concerns my family. We saw a picture of Joseph's family earlier, and I also have two children. I have two boys. And my oldest lad, when he was 7 years old, a couple of years ago, a perfectly healthy kid, loves Liverpool Football Club. He's got a little Scouse accent, unlike his dad. He was struck by a hepatitis, and it knocked out his liver. And we were in Alder Hey, and he was dying. In a matter of days, it had just struck him down, and it was looking pretty grim. And we went over to a specialist centre in Leeds, and they said to us, the only way that we can help to save your son's life is to look at a liver transplant. So, we didn't know anything about this at all, but we went to bed one Friday night holding our son who was dying, knowing that someone else, somewhere in the UK, would die that evening, and that through their generosity and the brilliant capability of professionals in the National Health Service, that my son's life would be saved. And he received a liver transplant, and he's now 9 years old. He's playing football 3 times a week, he's swimming, and he's optimistic about the future, and he's got a great, hold on life again. So we were extremely fortunate. Now, why am I telling you that, and why is that my second why? Well, obviously I have something very, very precious in my life now that I'm keen to look after and give him every opportunity he can. But the why for me is also about society. It's also about us realizing our potentials as individuals, but also developing a strong sense of community, because my son's life was saved and he's held up today by a fantastic community. I regard the NHS in the UK as the highest expression of our civilization, and the care and the support that we received as a family is the big why I care about the future of this country and the way in which we operate within this nation state. So those are a couple of whys from me. So it's my great pleasure to introduce our very distinguished speaker this evening, Gori Daniel, and if you don't mind me just reading a little bit about his profile. Gori is a partner at Adams & Moore, which is a top UK accountancy and professional advisory firm, and he graduated from Brunel University with a degree in business economics, and he also holds a master's degree in management science and operational science from the Warwick Business School. I don't know if we were at Warwick at the same time, but that's a very fine business school that you graduated from. And he's currently still a student. He's completing a PhD in international business and strategy at Loughborough University, and he's driven up today from a meeting at Loughborough with his academic advisors, and we're very grateful to you for making the journey up here. Gori is widely regarded as an enterprise champion, and is already the author of a published book called Rise Above the Horizon of Average. He specializes in business transformation and leads the business advisory practice of his firm with clients across the private, public, and voluntary sector. His previous career journey included a wealth of experience at Transport for London and at IBM. He also serves as the Chief Inspiration Officer at Emerging Leaders Academy and is the International Development Director for the World Changes Foundations. And through both of these roles, he lives out his passion for changing the world by supporting the development of the next generation of leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a very warm Liverpool welcome to our distinguished speaker this evening, Gori Daniel. Welcome.
Well, I am lost for words. Joseph, I think I need a flicker. Good evening, everyone. I don't think I've ever been introduced like that, Edward. So let's just thank Edward for making it very difficult for me to find words to speak. Okay, all right. We don't have a great deal of time, so I'm just going to jump into what I'm here to do. Firstly, I've got to say that I've been blown away by just listening to you guys and the wealth of passion, the well of passion that seems to be in this room. One of the things that really, really gets me, they say one of the ways of really finding out what you really care about is really what annoys you and what upsets you. One of the things that upsets me is having people with so much unfulfilled potential distracted by what other people believe to be impossible. Have we ever examined what that word actually means, impossible? I think it means I can't do it. So if I can't do it, you absolutely can't do it. You know, I think it was Nelson Mandela that said, it always seems impossible until it's done. And one of the things that I've discovered is that, you know, what makes it possible for someone who used to sleep rough to have the dream of not only completing his education, but doing it in a completely different country, and then, you know, being the best student, not only at that university, but the British computer is basically a sense that, look, I can do this. I was made for more. You know, I was just also reflecting on what, you know, Edward said as well. The NHS is where it is today because people like Abdul decides that I'm going to give my life to ensuring that other people can have theirs. That's pretty remarkable. And that is at the core of, you know, what I'm going to talk about today. But first of all, who knows who that is? I'm hearing rumblings. Who's that? Muhammad Ali. Who's on the floor? Could be, not Joe Frazier. Sonny Liston, and that fight was in 1974, so I understand why most of you probably wouldn't know who that was. It's amazing, because if I tell you who Sonny Liston was until he lost to Muhammad Ali, you would realize why they call Muhammad Ali the greatest. You see, I have a picture of this in my office. I have a picture of it in my study at home. Because every time I come across something that seems impossible, I remember the story. Now, as it happens, Sonny Liston was the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world at this time. And Cassius Clay, as was his name, was just an up-and-coming whippersnapper. Really, they were predicting that he would be annihilated in the first round. You know, one of the commentators said that, look, they wouldn't even want to walk on the same street as Sonny Liston, not to talk of getting in the ring with him. And Muhammad Ali, who was, you know, the underdog, ranked underdog for this fight, came in with, you know, a level of self-confidence that no one had ever seen. You know, he made it famous for people like, you know, Mayweather to do what he does today, where the fight is concluded even before you enter into the ring. Quickly, let me tell you his strategy. This is my analysis, by the way. You won't find it anywhere else. Because the reality was that they were right. All the commentators were right. He was outgunned by Sonny Liston. He was bigger, he was stronger, he was 10 years older, which, you know, at that time wasn't seen as a disadvantage. You know, Cassius Clay was smaller, a lot more inexperienced. But you know what Cassius did? He didn't focus on what he didn't have. He didn't focus on the fact that he didn't have the strength. He focused on the fact that he was faster and he wouldn't get hit. You know, something that Mayweather does as well. He wore out his opponent, and then when his opponent was worn out, angry because he had held all sorts of abuse, beating him down mentally, he then went in for the kill. And then this is where he uttered the word, "I shook up the world. I shook up the world." Sometimes we lose because we follow rules that weren't meant for us. Rules that were meant for those who win. Those who rise above the horizon of average essentially play by their own rules. They study. Their strength doesn't necessarily come from physical might or what other people think is strength. They look inwards, they figure out what makes them tick, and then they hone that until they're successful. You know, I want to talk about success today. But my first question, really, is what would your life accomplish? How many people realize that, you know, Muhammad Ali was bigger outside of the ring than he was in the ring? He stood for something, didn't he? And a lot of his whys was essentially standing as a figure for human rights and social consciousness. His why wasn't just about being the one in the ring that hits and beats everyone else. There was something more. And so when we talk about success, I think the sort of conversations that we're having in this room is the sort of conversations that I really, really enjoy and thrive, because it makes me understand that you will achieve what you're setting out to do. Because let me tell you something. You know, I've been thinking about these three words: survival, success, significance. All three starts with S, and all three essentially are categories of everyone, 100% of the people who live on this earth. They're either pursuing survival, success, or significance. You know, there's no academic backing for what I'm about to say, but I think it takes the same effort to pursue survival that it does to pursue success, that it does to pursue significance. I'm not talking about physical effort, I'm talking about mental. Motivating yourself to get up, to figure out this is what I'm going to do. Survival is about essentially being able to pay your bills, being able to do enough just to get through university. Success is getting out ahead, doing that little bit more, but mentally deciding that, look, I think I was made for a little bit more than just getting by. But beyond success is something else, something that I want to challenge each and every one of you to pursue, and that is significance. You know, our country is in a bit of a crossroad at the moment, a crossroad that I think can unleash us to new opportunities. And yes, I'm talking about Brexit. You know, I was one of those who voted to remain, and the reason why I did that is, as an economist, I thought that made sense, right? I think it made sense to be part of a wider community rather than to go alone. But I didn't vote remain because I felt we couldn't go it alone. We must never forget that the United Kingdom, I think, is the greatest country in the world. We must never forget our history, how this small island nation essentially built a commonwealth. We might not do it the same way we did it before, but we have those relationships. The Queen has kept those relationships over decades and years. But what I'm saying is that it will take the imagination of people in this room to begin to think about how our country will be going forward. I want to challenge us to dispense with survival. You know, survival, you know, if you do what you need to do, you will survive in the United Kingdom, in Europe. Success takes a little bit more physical effort, but I'm saying it takes the same mental effort, which is basically a decision to do whatever it takes to be successful. But I want to talk not about success, but about significance. And let me show another picture, actually. Does anyone remember where this image came from? Any athletes or athletics fans in the room? Pardon? Correct, yes, this was the World Athletics. And what happened here? The biggest upset in athletics history, right? You know, where Gatling beat Bolt, right? Can you remember that? Can you also remember what happened the next morning, the next day? Who was in the papers? Who won? Who was successful? Who was significant? But why? But why? See a subtle difference. You know, Galen, I think he has over his head the fact that he's considered by many to be a cheat. Sometimes when we pursue success, sometimes, especially when you listen to people like me, you do it at all cost. You basically, you know, you burn bridges, you have an a relentless focus. And sometimes that focus crowds out the things that are actually meaningful, the things that are actually important. Significance is success with rules. Rules that mean that you abide by things that uplift the human condition, things that bring, you know, that bring benefits to people other than yourself. I think the pursuit of success is hard. I really, 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 really do. You know, I just came back last week from Gaborone. It's taking me a while to pronounce that name. It's the capital of Botswana. And I was working with a room like this, a room full of people who you know, came in to learn about perhaps how they could achieve their goals. Now, Botswana is a middle-income country in Africa, and its aspiration is to become a high-income country by 2036. And there were like 70 senior public sector officials in that room. And you know, when I asked how many of them believed in it, about half a hand went up. And the reason why it's difficult to believe in is Botswana's primary source of income is diamonds, which is fantastic, but the commodity prices now are a little bit lower. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to make this an economics class. The point is, the challenge that they were having was one of belief, and that belief was reinforced by circumstances and situations that they found to be overwhelming. And the challenge that I gave them then is the same challenge that I give you now. You have to be clear that what you're pushing for is bigger than you, and that's what's going to allow you to push forward. Is it possible for Botswana to become a high-income country in the next 19 years? I think so. But I won't tell you about why I think Botswana can. Let me talk to you about why I think you can. You know, I've already mentioned it. It's the same energy, mental and physical. Mental, perhaps, that you need to pursue success is what you need to pursue significance. Let me try and illustrate through Clarissa's story. Clarissa had a very who knows who Clarissa Shields is? She's the only American to win Olympic gold twice. But her story, Olympic heavyweight gold actually, her story actually started years ago. She's from one of the poorest cities in America, Flint. Highest rate of violence, of everything that is negative. In fact, by the time she was 5 years old, her father went away to prison, and she spent the most of her childhood in and out of homes. Her mother, just to keep things going, had a string of relationships, and about 2 of the men in her life actually sexually violated her. Boxing was her way out. And if you hear her story, what I found remarkable about her story is that even from a young age, she was fighting not just for herself, she was fighting for her younger brothers and sisters, and now she fights for her town. What makes her get up to go to the gym, what makes her what makes her fight is not just because of Clarissa. It's really because of what her success brings to her city and to her town. You know, she talks about how she felt that by winning Olympic gold, that her life would change the first time around. And it did for all of 5 minutes. You know, she had a couple of interviews when she got back, but then, you know, people stopped calling after about weeks and months that she got back. And she had what you and I normally have when we have a situation where we have worked so hard, we've had some measure of success, and we think, you know, this should be it. She realized that winning one goal was not significant because someone else has done that she had to go and do something else. And that's why she sacrificed all she did. She put off a professional career just to make sure that she could achieve what no one else has achieved. And now her life is beginning to change. She's now a professional. She's now the first female heavyweight champion, two-time Olympic gold. So for Clarissa, success means being the first, despite the background that she had. But success is not really about what it means for other people. Success is about what it means to you. What does success mean to you? What does it mean? Does it mean money? Enough money to buy all that you want? Or, you know, like a lady said, they're leaving a legacy that outlives you. You know, being able to offer people the chance at life. I don't know. But I know some other people that I'm really inspired by. Everyone knows Malala, right? Do you know her story? Do you know how she started? You know how her advocacy was not just for her to have an education, but for everyone in Pakistan, particularly girls. And she endured an attempt on her life to be able to do that. You know, I've been fascinated by Elon Musk because, like Abdul, his focus is recognizing that as a civilization, the human race, we need to prepare for the existential threat of the world essentially coming to an apocalyptic end. And this one idea, this one need, has made him a billionaire. Because a lot of times when we're having these conversations, people think that, you know, these big dreams and these big visions essentially mean that, you know, you have to, you know, join the Red Cross or something like that. But here's an example of an entrepreneur that is making a business out of something that actually impacts the whole world. These are real world changes. The third person, there's someone that we might not really know in this room, is Dr. Stella Adedavo. She is credited as being the person that actually stopped the spread of Ebola in Nigeria. And that is significant, actually. You know, one of the things that Nigerians and everyone else knows is Nigerians are everywhere. They're some of the most traveled peoples in the world. So think about an Ebola outbreak in Nigeria. That would basically mean the whole planet will have a visit. You know, that's catastrophic. But what she did is she put herself in harm's way. She decided to not buckle under pressure from the Liberian ambassador to release the index candidate. And through you know, personal integrity and commitment to the public good, she ensured that, you know, that disease was contained. You know, my challenge to you today is really to be the kind of people who pursue significance. Because whether you pursue success or whether you pursue significance, it's going to take a lot of hard work. It really, really would be. It really will take all that you have and more. And at some point, you will want to give up. At some point, you would have given everything you possibly could. At some point, you would be under so much pressure to give in. What's going to keep you going is that why that we've been defining today. What's going to keep you going is that contribution that you want to make with your life, what you want to accomplish with your life. And assuming that you've already made that decision, that you will give your one and only life to something that is really, really amazing. And I know why we don't do it. I think it's really, really scary. I was hearing what, the introduction, and I was cringing because I'm not, the kind of person who would want to have, that said about me. I think it was Nelson Mandela said that no one benefits from you cringing. You don't. But when you shine, you let other people shine as well. You give other people permission to let their light shine. I believe strongly that each and every one of us has a seed of greatness inside of us. That seed of greatness needs to be fanned. It needs to be developed for it to manifest. And I think there are three things you've got to think about in order to do that. One, time. What do you do with your time? How are you investing your time? Is it binge watching Suits, like I do sometimes? Or is it really thinking about those hard questions? Really preparing yourself for the right opportunity to come through? Really, just putting in the time, the effort to actually achieve what you're committed to achieve. A lot of our dreams are huge dreams. And I think if your dream doesn't scare you, it's because it's not big enough. A friend of mine was really angry over the Brexit vote. He leads a community of tech entrepreneurs across the US, UK, a founders group. And I was saying to him, stop whinging about this stuff and do something about it. And on Monday, he led a team to France, Paris, to meet with the French president and his cabinet to talk about building a collaboration between Paris and London, irrespective of what happens in the Brexit negotiations. This is one guy, one idea that could potentially be world-changing. If your dream does not scare you, it's not big enough. But it's not enough to have a big dream. You've got to do something about it. And what you do with your time gives me a sense of whether or not it's a pipe dream or is a vision waiting to happen. The second thing is tribe. Who do you hang around? Do you hang around other people who believe that, who are crazy enough to believe that they can change the world? Or do you hang around people who tell you how crazy you are, right, for believing you can change the world? I'd rather hang around other crazy people, right? People who are doing something that really, really challenges me to do more than I'm doing. The third is treasure. And that really has to do with, all of us need, some of us, not all of us, right? Some of us need to make a living. But the question is, what do you do with your money? What do you do with your talents? Do you get into debt in such a way that basically you limit your options in terms of what you can do because I owe, so off to work I go? Or do you live under your means in such a way that gives you freedom? What do you do with your time? What do you do with what tribe are you part of? What group of people do do you spend time with? And what do you do with the resources that you have to give you options, to give you freedom to actually dream dreams and make them come true? Another set of 3 things that I think I need to leave you with is the importance of faith, friends. You can see a theme here. I've said tribe, now I call it friends. It's just because who you hang around is so critical to whatever you achieve. And the third thing is favor. This is another photograph from the recent Wealth Athletics meet that happened in London at the Olympic Park. What's the interesting story here? Does anyone remember? Bolt had a hamstring injury. So, this is significant because even a significantly weakened Bolt, right, would have meant that Jamaica would have won this race, right? Do we agree on that? Oh, no. Oh, we're being patriotic, right? They would have, you don't touch the Jamaicans, right, on this stuff. But, we don't care about that. We have relay gold. And the reason why we do, Britain has relay, the reason why we do is that the lads were ready. People say, luck has something to do with success, but I think luck is really opportunity meets preparation. If they weren't prepared, if they were not prepared, that would not happen. It would probably be the US. I think a lot of the reasons why we don't put in the time to prepare is we don't actually believe it's possible. And that's why faith is critical. If you do not believe in what you're doing, you're not going to sacrifice. You're not going to put in the time, you're not going to put in the effort, you're not going to do what you need to do. So faith is critical. You must believe that what you're working towards is not only possible, it's going to happen. And that's one of the reasons why I say to myself, and I commend the same to you, is that the only thing between you and greatness is time. The only thing between you and greatness is time. It's a done deal. You will manifest the greatness that's inside of you. That's what I say to myself. I'm just extending it to you. Friends, if you're preparing yourself, you've got to hang around people who are preparing too. People who are putting in the effort, people who are challenging themselves, people who have faith enough to believe that what they're trying to achieve is not only possible, but it's going to happen. And when it does, when the opportunity arises, they need to be ready, they need to be prepared. And yes, a little bit of luck is there as well. And this is what happened, I think, to us. Because no one could have engineered the hamstring injury. No one could have engineered that, right? That was just fortune. But if you have the opportunity, you're not prepared, you're not with the right people, it won't happen. Perhaps the final thing that I say, and this time not 3 but 4 things. A lot of people who are pursuing success, particularly at your stage, really focus on building their CV. I would urge you to build what I call a 3 CV. I'd say work on your character. I'd say work on competence, chemistry, and build a vision that is greater than yourself. I'm going to go over that once, very, very quickly. Character is who you are when no one's looking. What are the deep values that defy who you are? What are your red lines in terms of principles you will not cross? Who are you? What do you stand for? What do you believe? That takes effort. It must be intentional. Competence you get, skills, Develop the range of skills that will make whatever you're trying to achieve possible. Get the grades that you need. You know, get the mastery of the subject that you require. Chemistry is something that we don't work a great deal on. How you treat people and how people feel around you is critical. Relational intelligence, in many ways, there's more of a premium on that than natural intelligence or intellect. Just the ability to get on with people, the ability for people to like you. You know, people hardly select or employ people that they don't think they can get on with. And so you've got to invest a great deal of time in developing relational skills. You know, all three are important, but perhaps the most important is vision. How do you see yourself and what you believe to be possible? You know, my dad was an orphan by the time he was 8 years old. And his life got transformed because of education. And he instilled that in me. My grandmother was a maid. She didn't have the opportunity to get an education. But she raised her 3 children and primed in them the importance of focusing and going further than she did. I'm here because of the sacrifices that they made. My story is not Joseph's story. I wasn't on the street. And that's really because other people pay that price. I don't know what your story is, but I believe that you're made for more. And what you need to do is take the opportunities that you have, perhaps through the sacrifices of others, and make a commitment to leave this world a better place than you met it. Thank you.
Open this up for questions. I think mics are going around the room, and while you're preparing your thoughts and questions, maybe I could start off, Gori, by just posing 1 or 2 questions to you. One of the most powerful things that you did was to define significance, and you defined that by absence. So those pictures that you showed of the World Athletic Games, the most significant person wasn't even in the picture. He'd either pulled a hamstring or he hadn't made it into the photo finish at the end of the 100 meters. And that's an exceptionally powerful demonstration of significance. I heard another definition of significance the other day, and you know, one of our friends here said that that his why was about leaving a legacy and leaving something behind. Well, I heard a different definition of that the other day, which was that you will live for as long as every word you've ever uttered is remembered. Now think about that. That's every word, good, bad, ugly, powerful, meaningful, kind, unkind. Every word that you've uttered, until it's completely forgotten, you will never be forgotten. So, you know, great authors will never be forgotten because their words, Shakespeare's words, will always be quoted, will always be cited. What's your definition of significance, maybe in the context of what you are striving to achieve as an economist, as an educator, as an inspirational speaker? What would you assess as your aspiration to be significant?
Thanks, Edward. These are really good questions that really make you think, and a lot of thoughts have just gone through my mind. But let me hone in on the last question that you've asked. You know, I honestly believe, and I believe this for as long as I can remember, is that I believe that individually we can change the world. Mm-hmm. And I'm now at an age where, you know, I'm young enough to still believe that, but old enough to realize that it will happen through others. Mm-hmm. And this touches on the point of significance. Significance is recognizing that we are a small part of what really makes a difference, and to have a bigger goal, a bigger impact as the focus. I forget now who said it. He said, I think the word is that if you don't care who gets the credit, you'll actually get a lot done.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in terms of me, I want to see. I come fully alive when I see people achieve things that they never believed was possible. And that's basically by redefining words like impossible, to recognize that by sheer belief and sheer commitment, what we have considered to be impossible, whether it's being able to fly, whether it's being able to build skyscrapers, whether it's being able to achieve a first-class degree without the income of without any income. I guess that's what I want. That's what I want to see. Yeah. So really, my definition of significance really is encapsulated in the ability to be invisibly visible. You're not there, right, but what you stand for lives on. Yeah, whether it's through words or whether it's through the inspiration that people have and what they go on to achieve. I believe that the greatest legacy of a leader is not what he or she does. Is what others do because of them. Yeah, yeah.
No, very, very powerful indeed. One more question, if I may. I was traveling in Southeast Asia over the summer because we deliver, John Moores University degrees also in other countries. So I had the experience of visiting not for the first time, but I went to Myanmar, Burma as was. Partly because Aung San Suu Kyi is an honorary fellow of Liverpool, John Moores University, and has called for support from Western universities in developing educational opportunity in Myanmar, where the universities were shut for 30 years because the military didn't want people to learn and critically engage with what was going on. And you saw lots of people still during this very tortuous transition that Myanmar is going through, really struggling for survival, struggling to gain a foothold within a kind of newly emerging society. And I thought about this when you were going through your first triptych there of survival, success, and significant. And I wondered, those are obviously all interrelated, but do you think you can be successful and achieve significance if you're caught up in a struggle for survival?
You don't make these easy, do you? I think if you asked Nelson Mandela that question, he'll probably say yes. If you ask Martin Luther King that question, he'll probably respond and say yes. My question, I think the real question really is, what do you define as success? And what do you define as significance? I think the role that Malcolm X, Martin Luther King played in the American Civil Rights Movement was such that ended in what appeared to be failure. It was a struggle for survival.
Yes.
But its significance, it's that it paved the way for someone like Barack Obama to be president of the United States of America. So really it's about, what sort of time horizon are you looking at? Because Burma is in a very challenging and interesting position right now, and the significance of the work that they'll do is not something that will be manifest in a couple of years. This is something that over a period of time you look at. But the motivation for the change, which may initially be incremental, not transformative, the motivation has to be significance. It really has to be transitioning from where they are right now to what they consider to be the promised land. I'm using, language that has inspired me. I remember reading, while I was at university, Nelson Mandela's book, Long Walk from Freedom, and I felt like I was in a room with him and he was talking to me. And he was talking about the struggle, the 27 years in jail. And a lot of that time, you know, that was a struggle for survival.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But in his mind, it wasn't a struggle for survival,
Mm-hmm.
because he was focusing on completely changing his nation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It appeared to be about survival, but you know, over the passage of time, we see what that resulted in.
Mm-hmm.
When I say survival, what I mean is people whose vision is about feeding their bellies, you know, buying the next car, and just essentially being, you know, just over broke. That's what I mean by survival. You know, success is about, you know, something slightly more than that. It's basically about essentially being a reference point. The challenge with success is that, you know, you have many temptations when you're just focused on trying to be the best, the only. Significance is more all-encompassing. It's beyond you. It's beyond your personal ability or positioning. Significance is other-centered rather than self-centered. And that's what I mean by that. And so, yes, Burma's situation now is that, you know, the next step on the wrong is basically survival. But that can't be what that struggle is all about. It can't be. It must be about how do you transform from a nation that is where it is today to a nation where, you know, it's a completely different place. Because of the sheer force of vision and sense of what's possible if they apply themselves.
There's that great quote from Martin Luther King, isn't there? The night before he was assassinated in Memphis, where he talked about the promised land said, "I may not get there with you."
Absolutely.
But he had the vision, you know, to portray what a society might look like.
And that vision inspired others. And I think that's the key thing. You know, a friend of mine says something that I find really remarkable. Nobody rises to low aspirations.
Great. Well, let's open this up to questions and comments or contributions from the floor. Do we have some mics? Yes, we do have some mics here roving around. Who would like to ask Gori a question or just reflect on what you've heard from our speaker this evening? Who would like to go first? Okay, I'm a bit blinded by the light here, but I don't... Right, there's one over here. Yes, please.
God, thank you very much for that very interesting talk you've given to us. As there was a call for questions, I was just thinking to myself that one of the things you mentioned was self-confidence, the need for self-confidence, and believing in your ability to do or to be more. And I just think to myself that some people just seem to have that belief in themselves and their ability to be more, and some people don't have it in them. And I was thinking, what is the cause for this? And sometimes it seems to be because of the environment they've grown up in. Maybe they were told they can't do it. But like Joseph's story, he sort of grew up in that environment where he was told there isn't much for you, but he somehow rose above that. And I'm thinking to myself, why is it that some people can and some people can't? Well, I was just wishing you could share more light into that.
I wish I knew. It is a good question. The reality is that success is tough. And I'm told that our brains and our bodies are wired to keep us safe. So pushing yourself to something that is uncomfortable is fairly unnatural. So there has to be some degree of intervention, whether it's by people around you, and God help you if people around you don't actually believe that, you know, anything is possible. But I've always been inspired by the story of the deaf frog. Have you heard the story of the deaf frog? Okay, I'll tell it to you. So there were two frogs caught in a jar, and they were trying to get out of this jar. Now the lid of the jar had been taken out, and then they were surrounded by other frogs, and those frogs were willing them on to jump, and they have long hind legs to jump and to get out of the jar. And hours and hours went by, and from willing them on, they started telling them, oh, don't worry about it, save your energy, give up now, try. And one of those frogs actually heard what was being said, and then actually listened to that and then gave up. The other kept going because he didn't hear what they said. All he saw was the hand gestures. He thought that they were still willing him on until the point where he jumped and tipped over and came out. So he got out of that jar because he couldn't hear the naysayers. And this is a story of Cassius Clay, right? I'm sure he didn't even listen to what they were saying. Or if he did, he reinterpreted what they were saying. And that's one of the things that I do sometimes. When someone says I can't do something or something's not possible, I just say, you're saying that because you can't do it. You can't do it, and so you think because I can't possibly be better than you. You think that I can't do it because you can't do it. So you've kept me at your level. No, I'll give it a go. Doesn't mean I'll do it. And this is something else that achiever types need to be a little bit humble, right? The fact that you believe you can doesn't mean you're gonna. And the fact that you believe you can doesn't mean that even if you do, it's gonna happen in 5 minutes. And this is a story of Clarissa Shields. You put effort in, you do all that you can, and it doesn't happen the first time. Real achievers, because they're one with what they're trying to achieve, they're like Nelson Mandela, right? Nelson Mandela was interviewed once, and some young interviewer asked him, you endured jail for 27 years, for the pursuit of freedom. How did that feel? Nelson Mandela looked at him in his stoic, characteristic self and said, young man, I was born free. So in his mind, the external reality had to match with the internal. And he would do whatever it takes. And so to answer your question, the reality is that I don't know. I've got an 11-year-old daughter who, ever since she could hear what I was saying, I've been talking to her about the importance of confidence. And sometimes I'm not sure she gets it. So, but I'm trying to do what I'm saying to you is create an environment where hopefully one day she'll get it. That whenever she puts her mind, she can do whatever she puts her mind to. And if she tries and fails, she needs to reflect on why it didn't go right and try again.
Yeah, I'm sure she's filing it away, even though she may not be responding. Okay, any other questions or comments from the floor? Okay. Well, maybe I could just, comment.
You have someone.
Hi.
Was there another one over here?
Yes.
Great. Sorry, I can't see you with the lights.
No, we can't because the lights
shining in my eyes. But please
Can
go
you see
ahead.
me now?
Yes, I
Yes.
can see you now. Yeah.
Thank you so much for the talk so far. You've shared such profound insight. I've taken so many notes and I've learned a lot, so thank you both. So my question is sort of regarding the art of balance. Often when we're pursuing our talents and pursuing our giftings and our interests, we're often cautioned to, not be a jack of all trades and a master of none. But you both wear a variety of different hats. You're educators. Gori, you're involved. You're a successful partner. You're an author. You're a speaker. So I sort of want to know, how were you able to venture into these different sides of yourself without, thinning yourself out and still maintaining that effectiveness? And what kind of tips and suggestions can you give to those that are trying to explore their various giftings, but at the same time, not trying to compromise their effectiveness in those areas? I hope that's clear.
That's a great question.
It is a fantastic
I'll
question.
let you answer that one.
Thank you. I think in my first or second year at university, I started reading outside of my course. So I would read about people like John Galbraith, who not only was an economist, but he was a philosopher. and he was a poet. And others, and I would be thinking to myself, how is this possible? You know, and I would read of others who were not just economists, but they were also physicians. How can you be a doctor and an economist? Now, I'm not suggesting that, by the way, because, you know, the body of knowledge then is slightly different from the body of knowledge now. But one of the things that I've realized that there's some people who are wired for variety, and some people who are slightly wired, you know, for a singular focus. And the important thing is not trying to be who you're not. Now, if you're wired for variety, you know, the remarks that I'm going to make are for you, not for the focus guys. Because we need focus guys. I want a focused surgeon. That's what I want. I want a surgeon that's focused. I want a pilot that's focused, right? That's what I want. I don't want, you know, him dabbling, probably going to get a call about some sort of speaking engagement. No, don't speak to anybody, right? Just focus on getting me better. So for the guys who are wired with variety, one of the things that I learned because of this balance of effectiveness is try and reflect and see whether there's a stream that goes through all the things that you're interested in. You know, Demi, my 11-year-old, is someone who I think, you know, they've always said she's a bit of an all-rounder. I was talking to her as I was driving up today, and she says she's now been selected into the this is her third week in secondary school. She's now been selected into the netball team. 2 weeks ago, she was selected in the football team, and I said, "How'd you manage that?" She said she had 2 matches against 2 teams today that she played half and half. I'm like, my goodness, okay, but I can relate to her, right? And she comes alive when she does that, and she needs to reflect on the themes that are going through, you know, all these elements, because that's what allows you to integrate. And for me, I discovered the theme for me was really transformation. You know, the stuff that I do impact on helping people believe that what they thought was impossible is possible. But not just from a belief, you know, this is where the science goes into it, is basically, you know, this is why I studied, this informed my choice of academic career, my studies. This is why I studied operational research and management science, which is decision support. How do you create models that help you predict, you know, you set a vision, how do you now navigate and figure out how to make that happen? How do you put plans in place to do that? So it's not just airy-fairy belief. I think belief is the beginning of achievement. But that's not where it stops. It's really about putting systems and processes in place, putting plans and executing with focus that makes that happen. So, you know, for me, my themes are people, organizations, and nations, right? And there's a theme there. So if it doesn't fit that theme, I may be interested in it, but I guess I'm wise enough now to realize that it's probably for somebody else to do, because I don't have the energy. I don't have the energy to put behind it, because it's not one of those themes that really excites me. The second thing is recognizing that when you take something on, you probably have to let something go, right? And for me, this is...
Yeah, please.
Lastly, for me, this is where I developed the whole concept of being invisibly visible. If I believe in something, I'm probably doing it with other people. So when another opportunity comes up, what I'm doing doesn't die. Other people are doing it, and I get joy, right, out of them doing it, not feeling that I have to be front and center of all the things that I initiate or start or get involved with.
Yeah. Good. Thanks very much for that, Gori, indeed. And Joseph is moving on the stage, and he's bigger than me, so I think I may have to give way in a moment. But there was something that you just said about you know, reading around your subject when you're at university. Many of you are at different stages of your university journey, and I would just want to augment that a little bit and say that, you know, some of the most significant talks that you attend you know, during your time as students will be outside of your curriculum. Some of the most interesting conversations that you have will be with other people studying other subjects. And some of the most impactful stuff that you read will be on works that are not assigned to your specialist program of study. And, you know, I hope that you'll look back on this evening's talk and really recognize this as one of the most significant talks that you've heard, because I think one definition of university is that we're trying to give everyone an opportunity to be great. We can't assure greatness in all of our graduates, but we want everyone to be given the opportunity to undergo the kind of journey that our speaker has talked about this evening and have a shot at greatness and have a shot at achieving significance. And I think we're tonight a real masterclass in how you can take control of your destiny and think through the ways in which you can give yourself a better shot at being truly significant and leaving a major impact on life. So can you join me, please, in thanking our speaker this evening? Really enjoyed it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's fantastic.